Because one of the things that I hope to accomplish in these days with you today is that we're going to be working together and doing biblical theology today and the next couple of days. Now, I'm not talking about biblical theology that makes you go to sleep. I'm talking about biblical theology which will help you in your own personal life as well as in your ministry as a pastor or church leader. My wife and I are blessed with 4 adult children. And I'll probably, over the course of the next few days, tell you some stories about my kids. But I'm going to tell you a story about my youngest daughter. Her name is Ruth Ann. And she is a professional actor. She performs on a stage. She dances. She sings. She does Broadway type shows. And God has given her an extraordinary voice, and she's a very gifted young lady. She's 28 years of age. And about a year and a half ago, she was starring, she had the lead role in the very famous play called Beauty and the Beast. She was actually Belle in Beauty and the Beast, if you know the story. And I went to see her one night perform on stage. And while I was watching my daughter perform these numbers on stage, I just was overcome with emotion. And to watch your own child performing on stage, I was drawn into the story of Beauty and the Beast in a way that I knew the story. But I was drawn into this story in a completely new way. Because it was my daughter performing. And when my daughter finished, I was weeping. I was sitting in my chair and I was just bawling like a little baby. And when the play was over, I went and grabbed my daughter and I folded her into my arms and I hugged her and told her how proud I was. And she cried and I cried. It was a very emotional moment for me. And she said, "Daddy, come with me." And she took me down this dark aisle. We went past the stage. We went past the set of Beauty and the Beast. And all of the seats where the patrons sat. And she took me behind the scenes to the backstage where the play was being performed. And she proceeded to introduce me to all of these people. This is my dad. And I met the person who does the lights, and I met the person who does the sets, and I met the person who does the costumes, and I met the director of the music, and I met the people playing in the orchestra. I met all these people. And then my daughter turned to me and this is what she said to me. She said, "Dad, I would not be able to do what I do on the stage night after night after night. Were it not for everything that happens behind the curtain." The audience doesn't see any of this. All they see is what is taking place on the stage under the light. But it is these people behind the stage that are making what I do on the stage come alive. And I thought about what my daughter was saying. And I thought, this is the thought that came to my mind when she said that. That what my daughter is actually saying is she's illustrating precisely how our Bible needs to be read. You see, what often happens to pastors and church leaders is we take our Bibles, and we know that our Bibles contain a lot of different stories. And we know these stories. We know how important they are. We're enthralled with the biblical stories. We retell these stories. But oftentimes, I think that we treat the biblical story, the big story, it's like a string of beautiful pearls without the string. They're beautiful stories. And they roll around on the table, and they have no connection to one another. We don't know how these beautiful stories, these simple, tiny, single, graduated pearls, how do they tie together? What's the string that pulls it all together? What's the big story that we need to help us give understanding to the smaller stories in the Bible? Because when we understand the big story of the Bible, and when we are aware of that story in our preaching, and our teaching, and our that big story is similar to what goes on behind the curtain in the play Beauty and the Beast. It's what's giving meaning to all of the smaller stories. And not only that, friends, but we're not just communicators of this story. Even though it's a fantastic story, we are participants. We are the actors of this story in our generation today. So what we're going to be doing over the course of the next few days is we're going to be talking about and seeking to understand this great story. All of life is a story, Matthew said. You and I were made not just to enjoy stories, but we are to enter into that story. We long to take our lives, our stories, and merge them with another larger story that gives meaning to our lives. I think a lot of people become despairing and lose hope because the story that they're living is a very, very sad story, and it has no future. And pastors, church leaders, we have been trusted with the greatest of all stories. It's not a story designed by men. It's a story that survived history. It's the greatest story. And we have the wonderful privilege of sharing this story with you. If we want to know what it is that we are to do, we must first determine the story to which we belong.
թե որ պատմության մասն ենք։
And here's what often happens in our churches.
Հաճախ մեր եկեղեցիներում հետևյալն է տեղի ունենում։
We treat this book
Այս գրքի հետ մենք վարվում ենք
as simple information.
իբրև տեղեկատվության աղբյուր։
We think that what this book is supposed to do is it's supposed to simply enlighten our minds. Now, there's no question about it that the Bible enlightens our minds. It exposes us to different ideas, thoughts, concepts, theologies, understandings of who God is and how God operates in the world. But friends, this book is about much more. It is a living book. It is a living story. And God is inviting each and every one of us to join with Him in what He's doing in the world today. Oftentimes what happens is our contemporary unbiblical preference, both inside and outside the church, is for information over story. And people oftentimes think that stories are shaped by people. In fact, it's the other way around. People are shaped by the stories that they're living. And here's the reality. Every single one of us in this room today, no matter what your background, what your culture, what your language, where you've been, what hardships you've been through, what painful experiences you've had in your life, the stories that we've been told, and the stories we tell ourselves, they end up shaping all of our experiences. Let me give you an illustration. If you think of God as an angry, punishing, vindictive God, if that is your view of God, your life experiences will reflect that viewpoint. If you think that God is some kind of Santa Claus in the sky, that all He does is just dole out gifts one after the other and require nothing from us, and ask nothing of us, your experience will reflect that viewpoint. In other words, stories have an incredibly important role in our life. And so here are three questions that I want to pose today. And we're going to think about this in light of the great story in the Bible. I want you to think in these days together as we go along. I want you to be thinking about your own story. Because you're not just a living, breathing blob of flesh and molecules. You're a totally unique individual who's been created in the image of God. And your story, all of your story matters. Not only do I want you to think about what is your story, but what story are you living by? What is inspiring you as a pastor? How are you living your life? Are you just at the sort of at the control of the whims and the tides and the currents of the culture?
Ինչպես է քո կյանքը ընթանում։ Արդյոք քո կյանքի օրձանոթները, վերի վարերը, որ լինում են, դու դրանք քո ձեռքում ես արել ղեկը ու դու ես ղեկավարում։
Are you going to let the world's narrative squeeze you into its mold?
Թե դու թույլ ես տալիս, որ աշխարհը իր մշակույթով եւ իր թելադրանքով քեզ ճզմի եւ իր ճանապարհով առաջ տանի։
Or are you going to get to know the divine script?
Թե դու ծանոթանալու ես աստվածային պատմությանը
and take your cues on how to live your life.
Եվ քո հրամանները
How to love your
այստեղից
people.
վերցնել, ինչպես ապրել քո կյանքը, ինչպես սիրել քո մարդկանց,
How to pastor your church.
ինչպես հովվել քո եկեղեցին,
How to impact your world.
ինչպես ազդել քո
How to
շրջանի
live out your
աշխարհը,
mission.
ինչպես ապրել քո առաքելությամբ,
How to be a light to the nations.
ինչպես լինել լույս աշխարհի ու ժողովուրդների համար։
From the story of all stories.
Ամենամեծ պատմությունների պատմությունից։
And here's the third question.
Եվ երրորդ հարցը.
Is the story that you're living right now, today,
Այն պատմությունը, որը որ դու ապրում ես այսօր,
is it the story that you want to live by?
արդյոք այն պատմությունն է, որով ուզում ես ապրել։
Is the story you're living the story that you really want to live?
Այն պատմությունը, որով դու ապրում ես, արդյոք այն պատմությունն է, որով ուզում ես ապրել։
Now, I mentioned earlier that we know the individual stories of the Bible.
Մենք նախկինում նշեցինք վերևում, որ մենք ծանոթ ենք Աստվածաշունչի առանձին պատմությունների։
We oftentimes know the circumstances, we know the characters, we know the history.
Շատ հաճախ գիտենք պատմությունը, ինչ համատեքստում է տեղի ունենում,
But we
կերպարները
don't
ովքեր են,
always know how these stories
բայց
relate.
շատ հաճախ չգիտենք, թե ինչպես են այս պատմությունները մեկը մյուսի հետ կապվում։
And because we don't know how these
Եվ քանի
stories
որ մենք
relate
չգիտենք,
together,
թե այս պատմությունները ինչպես են կապվում մեկը մյուսի հետ,
we lose sight of the bigger story.
մեծ պատմության մի բաղադրիչը կորցնում ենք։
So here's what I'd like to do over the course of the next 3 days together.
Վերջին եկող երեկորերի ընթացքում հա թե ինչ եմ ուզում անենք։
We're going to look at 5 key themes
5 կարևոր թեմաների
from Genesis to Revelation.
Սկսելով ծննդոցից մինչև հայտնություն։
We're not going to go in depth into a single passage.
Մեկ համարի մեջ չենք խորանալու։
We're going to get up in an airplane. I'm going to take you up to about 15 to 20,000
Ինքնաթիռ ենք
feet.
նստելու 15-ից 20,000 ոտնաչափ, մոտ
And we're
7,000 մետր բարձրանալու ենք։
We're going to do a flyover
Մի հատ թռիչք ենք կատարելու
of this book.
այս գրքի վրայով։
And by doing a flyover, we're going to look at the major themes of the Bible.
Աստվածաշունչի մեծ թեմաներին ենք անդրադառնալու։
And in looking at the major themes of the Bible, we're going to see how the Bible
Եվ այս
is
մեծ
all
թեմաներին
tied
անդրադառնալով
together.
հասկանալու ենք, թե ինչպես է Աստվածաշունչը միասնական ծայրից ծայր։
Because I think that one of the things that I've observed about pastors and church leaders around the world is that we are people who do not know our story well. And we need to be people who know our story well. Several years ago, I was in Africa. My wife and I were doing some work in Kenya in the largest slum south of the Sahara Desert called the Kibera slum.
Սահարայում ես եկել գինը այնտեղ ծառայություն էինք մատուցում ամենամեծ ապրելու տեղեր կան այսպես դրսերում սաբիրաստամեր կոչ։
Imagine this, about 1 million people, it's estimated, live within a land area about 6 square miles. No houses, shacks.
Մոտ 1 միլիոն 1 million people
1 million.
1 միլիոն մարդ ապրում էր what area
About 6 square miles.
6 քառակուսի մղոն մի ողորը 1.6 կիլոմետր է լավ ասենք 10 քառակուսի կիլոմետրի վրա է ապրում չէ շաշեցի
The largest
10
slum.
քառակուսի կիլոմետրի վրա ապրում է 1 միլիոն մարդ տներ չկան վրաներ յուղակներ խրճիթներ 1 միլիոն մարդ
We were working with pastors and church leaders in that slum.
ու
Hundreds of them.
Ցավայր ասենք ինչ ասենք որտեղ որ դրսերում են էլի ապրում
Some of the poorest.
Ճամբարային պես մի բանում ապրում էին աշխատում էին եկեղեցու հովիվների հետ ամենաաղքատ վայրերից մեկն էր
And after we had finished a very, very hard 10 days working with people, we decided, our team decided, let's go and see some of the wildlife of Africa. So we took a safari. We got in a Jeep and we went to the Masai Mara, where the wildebeest from South Africa and Tanzania every year they make a migration north to the Masai Mara. And they take the grasslands and millions upon millions of wildebeest as they're migrating, they literally mow the Maasai down, eating the grasses. It goes from being a lush green fields as far as the eye can see to absolute brown desolation. It's extraordinary. We would go out every night and we would look for wildlife. And our guide one day said, you want to see what are called the Big Five. It's the rhino, the lion, the elephant, the leopard, and the Cape buffalo. They're called the Big Five. And they're not called the Big Five because of the size of the animal. They're called the Big Five purportedly because they are the most difficult and dangerous animals. It's hard to see all five of these animals on safari. These pictures that you see, these pictures, I took on my safari. I got to see the Big Five. It was amazing. It was an amazing to see all five of these animals. Now, here's what I want to suggest. That in order for us to see the Big Five, we had to have real sharp eyes. And fortunately, we had a guide who was with us. We were riding along a road one day in the afternoon. And all of a sudden he stopped. And he said, look up in that tree. He said, I think that's a leopard. The leopard is the hardest of the five to see. I'm looking in the tree. I don't see a leopard. No, there's a leopard up there. I don't see a leopard. I kept looking and looking. There are all these people down at the bottom of this tree, not right under the tree, quite a ways away from the tree. Everybody was looking up, and all of a sudden, I got this angle on the tree, and I looked up, and I could see the leopards wagging back and forth. And there were so many people there. Finally, the driver, he took us around to the other side of the tree. The sun was setting, and suddenly the leopard stands up and he starts to come down the tree. I had a camera with a telephoto, and I just took a series of this leopard scaling down the tree. The Big Five. I want to suggest that the Bible has the Big Five. And in order to see the Big Five, you got to have an eye for it. Because it's not always obvious. So what are the Big Five? Well, we're going to begin today the 5 why, the key themes of Scripture. And here is the first of the 5. And we're going to spend the rest of this session on this one and maybe even into the next session a little bit. The first key theme of Scripture is the created image. The created image. And the part of your Bible where this is explained to us and presented to us is in the first 2 chapters of our Bible. In Genesis 1 and 2. And I want us to look specifically, well, let me give you the 5 first. Here are the 5 things. There's the created image. There is the cracked image. There is community. There is Christ. And there is completion. 5 words. Created, cracked, community, Christ, completion. We're going to talk about each of these over the course of the next 3 days. I want you to open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1. We're going to look at all 3. We're going to look at the first one. And here's what I want to suggest about this first theme. Here's a picture. Here's a picture I want to plant in your minds. This is a signpost. Actually, I was with Pastor Keith when I took this picture. We were at the Cape Coast in South Africa. This is the southernmost point of the African continent. Right at the tip of the continent, between the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. Stunning view. And what God was doing in Genesis 1 and 2, He was setting up a signpost. And He was pointing the human race forward. It was as if God, in creation, He plants a signpost firmly in the earth. And the signpost says, this is the way that I want you to go. He's telling us that this is the place that I want you to live. This is how I want you to live. And this is why I want you to live. And so pay very close attention. Now here's what happens in our reading of Genesis 1 and 2. We are not always aware that sometimes when we open our Bible to Genesis 1 and 2, we bring with us a backpack. And into this backpack, we have loaded all kinds of biases. We've already predetermined what Genesis 1 and 2 is for. So as readers, we come to Genesis 1 and 2, and we have preloaded into our reading a bias about Genesis 1 and 2.
ինչի մասին ենք մենք կարդալու։
We all do this.
Կախադրամադրվածություն ունենք։ Բոլորս անում ենք սա։
We're all guilty of doing this.
Բոլորս էլ մեղավոր ենք, սրա մեջ մեր բաժին մեղք ունենք։
And these biases that we bring, that we pack into our backpack.
Եվ այս կողմնակալությունները, որոնք մենք վերուսապարկում կրում ենք,
these biases end up tainting our understanding
այս
of what God is trying to say to us.
Աստծո ասելիքը մի փոքր փոխում են, շեղում են։ Քանի որ մենք վերում ենք մեր կողմնակալությունը, արդեն չենք կարողանում իր ասածը օբյեկտիվ ընդունել, սուբյեկտիվ ուղղություն են տալիս։
Here's a bias.
Օրինակ մի կողմնակալություն։
We think that Genesis 1 and 2, God placed in the Bible specifically to prove the theory of evolution.
Մեզ շատ հաճախ թվում է, որ Աստված ծննդոց 1-2-ը գրել է Աստվածաշունչում տեղ ունի այս հատվածը, որ կարողանանք էվոլյուցիոն տեսությունների հակառակ դեմ դնել, ասել, որ էվոլյուցիա չի եղել, այլ Աստված է ստեղծել։
So this is how we read it. We approach Genesis 1 and 2 much like a lawyer does evidence.
Մենք կարդում ենք այս հատվածները այնպես, ինչպես իրավաբանը, դատապաշտպանը ուսումնասիրում է իր ապացույցները։
And we look for the evidence in Genesis 1 and 2 that's going to help us to establish that God is the creator and evolution is wrong.
Ապացուցելու, որ Աստված է արարիչը եւ էվոլյուցիոն տեսությունները սխալ են։
Is this a problem in Armenia?
Սա Հայաստանում խնդիր է։
Yeah.
Էվոլյուցիա խնդիր է Հայաստանում։ Հավատացողներ կան։ Գրել չկան։
Yeah, there are many people around the world who believe the theory of evolution.
Շատ մարդիկ կան աշխարհում, մենք որ հավատում ենք չէ էվոլյուցիային։
And Christians want to have an answer to the theory of evolution.
Եվ քրիստոնյաներն ուզում են իրենց պատասխանը ունենալ։
So we bring together all of these arguments in one of the first places that we go to prove the theory of evolution wrong.
Ու փորձում ենք մի շարք փաստարկումներ առաջ քաշելու։ Առաջին պատերից մենք որոնում ենք որն են։ Ծննդոց 1-2-ը բացում եւ ասում ենք ահա խնդրեմ։
And we think to ourselves that the reason why God put Genesis 1 and 2 in the Bible
ու մենք հաճախ կարծում ենք, որ Աստված ծննդոց 1-2-ը գրել է,
is to help us prove the theory of evolution. And because that's the bias that we bring to our reading of it, we oftentimes miss the deeper meaning of what God's trying to say. Or another bias that we bring is it goes back to our early years as small children in Sunday school classes or churches. Where maybe a Sunday school teacher drew you pictures of Adam and Eve in a garden. And we talk about the apple, and we talk about the fig leaves, and we talk about all of these things that happen in the garden. And we miss what it is that God is trying to say to us in this Here's a third bias that we bring. And this is probably the most severe bias. Is oftentimes when we think of the gospel, we start the biblical story in the wrong place. What happens to a story if you start a story where the author doesn't start the story? What does it do to the story? Yeah, the whole story gets distorted. What happens if you end a story where the author doesn't end it? You leave the story in the wrong place. The author had an intention with the story. And if we don't start the story where God starts his own story, and we don't end the story where God ends his story, it's like taking God's story and lopping off the beginning and the end. And we present this story to the world. And it's a distorted story. So here's what we often have done as church leaders in our preaching, in our teaching, in our presentation of the gospel. We start telling people who do not know Christ and who are outside the church we start telling the story in the wrong place. We start the story in Genesis 3 and we talk about sin and how God's going to deal with our sins. And what happens to our story when we start the story in the wrong place is the trajectory of the story is flawed. Friends, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that we start God's story where God. Because what happens when we don't is it's going to significantly influence the way in which we understand ministry. It's going to influence our understanding of our mission, the mission of the church, our understanding of calling, our understanding of what our role as human beings is here on planet Because when we actually start the story where God doesn't start the story, we're actually self-editing God's story. Genesis 1 and 2, overarching these two chapters, is they are intended to bring forth from us a Godward response on our part toward the one who created us. God is hoping to draw out of the human race in these two chapters this sense of awe and wonder over his sheer majesty and power. God is seeking to develop and provoke within us an awareness of his holiness. An appreciation for his exquisite beauty and what he's created. And a delight in his plans and his purposes. And if we do not understand the significance of what God's doing in these opening chapters, there is a high probability that we will misunderstand the rest of this book. That's why it's so important for us to understand what God's saying to us in the opening chapters. You know, for many, many years of my life, even as a pastor, I've been a pastor for 38 years. I've been involved in this ministry that I'm presently involved in for the past 9. But I started in pastoral ministry in 1980. I came out of the business world. I studied business in university. My undergraduate is in business. I love business. I love being involved in business. God plucked me out of the business world, called me into the ministry, and sent me on a path. And for many, many years, I started God's story in the wrong place. And I got frustrated. And I got bored with the story after a while. How many times can you tell people that they're sinners? And I began to ask myself, isn't there more than just this sin story? And then I was challenged, much like I'm challenging you today. Rethink my approach. And it's given me a whole new appreciation, not only for what my mission and purpose is in the world, but what God is trying to say to us in this book. And I don't pretend to understand everything in this book. In fact, I have more questions today about the book than I've ever had. The more I read the book, the more I think to myself, I know nothing about this book. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. We should not apologize about that. Because the depth and the riches of the wisdom and the understanding of God are incomparable. Who has a mind to understand the depths of God's wisdom? None of us do. But I'll tell you this, I'm inspired by this story. I'm hopeful because of this story. I'm reminded that there is no room for despair about my future because of this story. I look out upon the world, which is a very, very sad world today. There's conflict all over the world. There's ethnic cleansing. There's violence and hatred. There's abuse, and sin just continues to spiral down as we live our lives. And we reach points in our experience with God where we say, Lord, just like David the psalmist says, Lord, how long? How long, oh Lord? But my friends, I do not lose hope. Because I have decided to tether my story. I want to tie my activities to what God is doing in our world. And take inspiration from what He is doing, not only in our time, but what He's been doing. So, one of the things that we can do when we look at Genesis 1 and 2, I have a friend who says it this way: the answers that you get depend on the questions that you ask. The answers you get depend on the questions you ask. That's pretty simple. But it means this. We must make sure that we're asking the right question. So I think that when we read our Bibles, we need to train ourselves to be people who put questions to the Bible. I teach interpretation at a seminary back in the United States. Tell my students all the time, don't be afraid to question this book. Don't be afraid to put this book on a witness stand and pound it with questions. This book has withstood a lot of questions. And it's come out on the winning end most of the time. There's some questions we don't have the answers to. There's still some things that are deeply mysterious. But if we ask the right questions, it will give us answers. I want to suggest to us that there are 4 questions that Genesis 1 and 2 are seeking to answer for us. And here are the questions. The first question is, where are we? Where are we? Everything we see in these opening chapters of the Bible is about the material and earthly world that we inhabit. And what we see over and over again in these opening chapters is that the world that we live in, it's not evil. In fact, God says 11 times in the opening verses, what does He say? It is good. Put your foot on the ground. Stomp your foot on the ground. Everybody. Point to the ground, the earth, where our feet are firmly planted. And remind yourself of what God says about this. It is good. He's not saying it is God. He's saying it is good. The natural world is more than just nature. The natural world is more than just molecular matter. The natural world around us, God says, is it's charged with the glory and the grandeur of God. This is why David is able to say in places like Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they pour forth knowledge. There's no speech, there's no language that their voices not. Their words go out into all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. David penned these words one night while he was out probably shepherding the sheep.
David
is living in a fallen world. But he stops. And he's overwhelmed with the sheer glory and beauty of God. David was a good theologian. Because David never forgot that the world, the natural world, it's good. And as far as I can tell, God has not changed his opinion about his creation. God doesn't look at the world and go, ugh. He sees what sin has done to the world. But the world that we inhabit is charged with the glory of God. And the Bible begins with this creation. And it will end with the new creation. We start our Bibles in a garden. And we will end our Bibles in a garden. And this ought to be proof to us that God has not abandoned his creation. He's not given up on us. A large part of the God's story is learning to celebrate the creation in all of its richness, its grandeur, and its glory. Because the created order around us is telling us of the glory of God. There's a second question. It's not only answering the question of where are we, but who are we? When we read the opening chapters of our Bible, Genesis 1 and 2, they are going to make a demand upon us as readers. And here's what these chapters demand of us. We have to take our bag of biases off. And we have to go to a place that we've never been. We've got to imagine an experience we've never had. And think of a status that we've never enjoyed. For a purpose that we've not yet realized. This is what makes it so challenging for us. On day 6 of God's creative project, where God has put up his post and signpost, pointing us forward, telling us where to go. God presents his crowning achievement. Look with me at verses 26 through 28. Chapter 1. God says in these verses, let us make man in our image. The creation of mankind is in a class all by itself. Mankind's creation is different from the creation of the heavens or the earth or the sea or the land. It's different from the creation of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. And no other place place in this text, in these chapters,
Այս
are we
գրքները
told
ուրիշ ոչ միտեղ չի ասվում։
that the members of the Trinity are involved in the
Որ
creation process.
երրորդության երեք անդամները միացամուր կերպով ներգրավված են արարչագործության մեջ, այլ միայն այստեղ։
It is here that theologians across the world
Միայն
are
այստեղ է, որ
agreeing
ամբողջ աշխարհով եք աստվածաբանները միակարծիք են։
that the Trinity is involved
Որ երրորդությունը Հայրը Որդին եւ Սուրբ Հոգին ներգրավված են
in the creation of mankind.
մարդ արարածի ստեղծագործության
And it
մեջ։
is said this of mankind, and it is not said this of any other thing.
Եվ այստեղ մի խոսք է ասվում, որը ողջ արարչագործության մեջ ուրիշ ոչ մեկի համար չի ասվում։
This should be the first light that goes off in our minds.
Սա առաջին լույսն է, որ մեր ուղեղում պետք է պայծառ շողա։
This makes mankind
Սրանով է, որ մարդ արարածը
something superbly different.
Անբացատրելի կերպով գերազանց է մյուս բոլոր արարվածներից։
I love what author and theologian Chris Wright has to say about this. He says
Շատ եմ
these
սիրում
words.
հեղինակ եւ աստվածաբան Քրիս Ուոլֆի խոսքերը, նա ասում է տվյալը.
He said it may be easy to forget,
Միգուցե հեշտ է մոռանալ,
but we were human beings before we became Christians.
բայց մենք մարդ արարածներ էինք նախքան քրիստոնյա դառնալը։
And we don't stop being human beings when we become
Ու
Christians.
երբ քրիստոնյա ենք դառնում, մենք չենք դադարում մարդ արարած մնալուց։
And he goes on to add, though in talking with some Christians, you might think that they have forgotten that they are human
Ու
beings.
շարունակում է ասելը, որ թեև երբ խոսում ես որոշ քրիստոնյաների հետ, թվում է, որ իրենք մոռացել են, որ ընդհանրապես մարդ արարած են
He
իրենք։
makes this stunning statement.
Ու մի ամշեցուցիչ արտահայտություն է անում։
God is going to hold all of us accountable.
Աստված մեզանից հաշվետվություն է պահանջելու եւ որպես մարդ արարած,
As much as our Christianity.
ինչպես նաեւ որպես քրիստոնյա մարդ։
The part of the Christian faith is learning to live out our humanity.
Քրիստոնեական հավատքի մի անբաժանելի մասնիկն է ապրել մեր մարդկության բաղադրիչը։
Live out our humanity as image bearers of the King.
Մեր մարդկության բաղադրիչը ապրել իմանալով, որ դա արարչի կերպարի մի մասնիկն է։
There's a third question I want to propose that these chapters are asking. Not only
Երրորդ հարց կա, որ ուզում եմ բարձրացնել, որ այս
where are we?
ոչ թե որտեղ ենք,
We are on natural earth.
բնական աշխարհում ենք, ոչ թե ով ենք մենք,
We are image bearers created in the image of God.
արարչի կերպարը կրում ենք, ստեղծած արարչի կերպարով, եւ երրորդ
But why are we?
ինչու ենք։
Why did God make us? Why did He create us in His image?
Ինչու է ստեղծել մեզ իր պատկերով։
And I want to suggest two things that are said in this text in chapter 1, verses 26 to 28.
Ծննդոց 1:26-ից 28-ում երկու բան կա, որ ուզում եմ ասել։
God says we are going to create mankind in our image.
Աստված ասում է, ստեղծելու ենք մարդարարածին մեր։
This speaks to the purpose of God for human beings.
Սա խոսում է թե մարդ արարածի նպատակը որն է։
And that purpose is that we are to image God to the world.
Եվ այդ նպատակը գիտեք որն է։ Մենք պետք է Աստծո կերպարը կրկնօրինակելով ցույց տանք աշխարհին։
Now here's what we have to be careful of.
Ահա թե ինչի պետք է ուշադրություն դարձնել։
Remember our backpack?
Մեր ուսապարկը,
I have a feeling I know what many of you are thinking. You're thinking, there's no way that human beings image God to the world.
Ես գիտեմ դրանից շատերը ինչ են մտածում։ Շատերը մտածում են ձև չկա, մարդ արարածը Աստծո պատկերը կարողանա կրկնօրինակել։
When I read the newspaper in the morning,
Թերթիկ կարդում ինչ Աստծո պատկեր է։
there's murders, there's killings,
Սպանություն,
there's theft,
փոշի, գողություն,
there's wars.
թալան, պատերազմ,
there's brothers and sisters in Christ who are fleeing from their lives from places like Aleppo. There's violence in the Middle East, there's violence in Asia, there's violence in Africa.
Ասիայում, Աֆրիկայում, ամենտեղ։
Please, Pastor Lee, tell me where human beings are imaging God in the world. And here's what I would say. I understand what you're saying. But do not forget. Don't start your story in Genesis 3. Don't let your imagination be tainted by reading Genesis 1 and 2 through Genesis 3. Don't get ahead of the story. Just sit in Genesis 1 and 2 for a while. Treat it like a bathtub. Fill it with water. Fill up your bathtub with Genesis 1 and 2 and let it soak into your pores. Because God has not given up on Genesis 1 and 2, friends. He's still all about Genesis 1 and 2, friends. Let Genesis 1 and 2 fire your imagination. Let it inform your dreams. Let it inspire your initiative. Align your heart with God's heart for the world and for human beings. Because God has not given up. And we're going to see this as the story goes. Take your backpack off. And just let yourself swim. So God gives us this incredible purpose to image Him. The second in verses 26 and 28, God calls these human beings created in His image to exercise dominion or rule within the creation. Let's be clear that this idea of dominion is not what we typically think of when we think of dominion. We think of dominion as people who have ultimate power, they're radical, they're abusive, they're authoritarian in their leadership.
Եկեք ընդունենք, որ իշխանության գաղափարը մեր ունեցած գաղափարը չի, որը որ այստեղ գրված է։ Մեզ համար իշխանություն ունեցող մարդը ռադիկալ մարդ է, իշխող մարդ է, տիրող մարդն է, հա, ինքնավար մարդն է։
This is a very strong Hebrew word used here. And it means the imposing of your will on something or someone.
Այս բառը ենթադրում է քո կամքի կատարումը, պարտադրումը ինչ-որ մի բանի վրա։
But it's not imposing your will in the sense of violence or abuse.
Բայց ոչ բռնությամբ կամ վայրագությամբ։
It's the imposing of your will on something in the sense of being responsible for exercising careful dominion.
Քո կամքը պարտադրել ինչ-որ բանի վրա, զգուշորեն գործի դնելով քո իշխանությունը, քանի որ դու պատասխանատվություն ես կրում այդ ամենի համար։
And it's because we are created as image bearers.
Քանի որ մենք ստեղծված ենք իբրև Աստծո պատկերը կրողներ, պատկերագիրներ,
that God authorizes us as human beings
եւ այդ պատճառով է որ Աստված տալիս է մեզ, լիազորում է մեզ այս
to
իշխանությամբ,
exercise responsible dominion.
պատասխանատու իշխանությամբ է լիազորում։
In ancient times, when kings would set up images of themselves across their kingdom, they would do this for a specific purpose. Kings had vast tracts of land with lots and lots of people living throughout the kingdom. They didn't have modern forms of transportation or modern forms of communication. They had no iPhones in those days, no cell phones where they could communicate in an instant, no computers. You see, we've become so sort of conditioned to think that the world of the ancient world communicates and moves like we do, but it doesn't. So here's what kings would do. They would set up a statue of themselves in the far-flung places of their kingdom. And it was a picture of the king. Because the king knew that the people had a tendency to forget who their king was. So you know what the king did? I'm going to remind you. I'm going to put a statue of myself throughout my kingdom. And every time a person in my kingdom walks past the statue, they're going to look up at the statue and they're going to go, "Oh, I forgot. He's the king." You know what God was doing in creation? He has a vast kingdom. And he doesn't want the subjects of his kingdom to forget that he is the king. So you know what he did? I'm going to make you in my image. 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 I'm going to make you and you and you and everybody in my image. So that as we walk around life and we live our lives, we look at one another and we remind ourselves. You look a lot like the king. You smile like the king. You're living like the king. You're reminding me that there is a king. One final question. We'll conclude with this. Whose are we? There are two very prominent words for God in Genesis 1 and 2. One of the words is a word that's familiar to you. It's the word Elohim. The word Elohim, the Hebrew word Elohim, means the one true God, the all-powerful, the infinite, omniscient God.
Ամենմեակ ճշմարիտ Աստվածը, ամենազոր Աստվածը, ամենագետ Աստվածը, հավիտյան Աստվածը եւ ամեն տեղ գտնվող Աստվածը.
He is the God of all gods, the Lord of all lords. He is the incomparable one. This word Elohim is used 32 times in chapter 1 and 14 times in chapter 2. Here's what's interesting. There's another word for God that's used. And it's the word Yahweh. Jehovah.
Եհովա բառը։
It's the word that Jewish people today will not pronounce, and they use the term Yahweh to pronounce it instead. It's so holy.
Եհովայի բառը հրեաները այսօր չեն դավանում։ Ջեհովա բառը այնքան սուրբ է, որ այդ բառը չեն դավանում, դրա փոխարեն ասում են Յահվե, այնքան որ ակնածում են այդ անունից։
Here's what's interesting. This word is not used at all in Genesis 1.
Այս բառը ծննդոց մեկում գոյություն չունի։
The first time that this word appears in our Bible is in Genesis chapter 2.
Բառը տեսնում ենք Աստվածաշունչում, ծննդոց 2-4 համարում են։
And it's in relationship to the creation of man. It's used in that context.
Եվ օգտագործվում է մարդ արարածի ստեղծագործության համատեքստում։
What's the point?
Ինչ է նկատի ունեմ։
What God is doing in the creation of man is He's revealing Himself throughout the entire created order as the omniscient and transcendent one.
Երբ մարդ արարածին Աստված ստեղծում է, նա ներկայանում է իբրև ամենագետ, ամենակարող։
He is the holy God who is unlike any other God ever.
Նա սուրբ Աստված է, որը նման չէ որևէ ուրիշ Աստծո։
He's the King of Kings.
Թագավորների թագավորն է եւ տերերի տերը։
He is the one that is above all others.
Նա բոլորից բարձր Աստվածն է։
But when it comes to the creation of man,
Բայց երբ խոսքը գալիս է արդեն մարդ արարածի արարման մասին,
a different name is used.
մի ուրիշ անուն է օգտագործում։
And this name, Yahweh,
Եվ այս անունը Յահվե, Եհովա,
speaks of a God who longs to be enjoyed.
խոսում է մի Աստծո մասին, որը ուզում է իրենով ցնծանք, վայելենք։
Who speaks of a God that longs to be in relationship.
Խոսում է մի Աստծո մասին, որը փափագում է հարաբերություն ունենալ քեզ հետ։
And it's no accident, I believe, that
Եվ
the
ես
writer
համոզված եմ, որ սա սխալմունք չէ,
would use this name for God when it speaks of God.
որ հեղինակը օգտագործում է այս անունը, Աստծո այս բառը, երբ խոսում է մարդ արարածի ստեղծման մասին։
God wants human beings to know that He is creator and
Աստված
Lord of all.
ուզում է իմանալ, որ նա արարիչն է եւ տերերի տերը։
He owns everything,
Նա է տերը ամեն բանի,
for He is its creator.
քանի որ նա է արարիչը։
And human beings
Եվ մարդ արարածները
will one day have to answer to Him.
պիտի պատասխան տան իրեն։
Some people hate this idea,
Որոշ մարդիկ սարսափում են այս գաղափարից, որ մենք հաշվետվու ենք
but
Աստծուն։
I want you to think of it this way.
Բայց ուզում եմ մտածեք այս կերպ։
I think that the fact that God holds us accountable
Այն փաստը, որ Աստված մենք հաշվետու ենք Աստծուն,
and responsible for our deeds and our activities and our actions and our choices
եւ որ մենք պատասխանատու ենք մեր արարքների, որոշումների եւ խոսքերի համար,
it is actually a sign to us
սա նշան է այն բանի,
of just how special we are.
խոսում է այն մասին, թե մենք որքան յուրահատուկ ենք, իբրև Աստծո պատկերը կրողներ։
Consider this.
Հաշվի առեք սա։
Does not the fact that I ultimately have to account for my choices and my decisions make my choices and decisions all that much more important?
Այն փաստը, որ իմ արած որոշումների եւ գործողությունների համար ես հաշվետու եմ, միթե սա չի արժևորում իմ որոշումներն ու գործողությունները, միչը ավելի կարևոր չեն դառնում իմ որոշումներն ու գործողությունները ելնելով այն բանից, որ ես հաշվետու եմ դրանց յուրաքանչյուրի համար։
Holding us accountable doesn't mean that God's cruel.
Մեզ հաշվետու լինելը Աստծուն չի նշանակում, որ Աստված դաժան է։
Holding us accountable means that God intrinsically values us as human beings.
Հաշվետու լինելը նշանակում է, խոսում է այն մասին, որ Աստված արժևորում է մեզ յուրաքանչյուրիս անհատապես,
And He
իբրև
considers
մարդ
every
արարած։
decision that we make.
Եվ նա հաշվի է առնում յուրաքանչյուր որոշում, որ ես եւ դու կայացնում ենք։
So this is the first of the big five.
Սա հնգյակի առաջինն էր։
Created.
Ստեղծված